In today's world, there are three silent killers that can destroy the American family farm operation. Now, inside today's video, we're going to talk about exactly what those three killers are so that you can avoid them and make sure that your farm operation lives on to the next generation. So let's get to it. All right, killer number one is very simply your ego. Now, the reason I bring this up is because over the years of working with hundreds of family farm operations, there's been a select few, and really it's probably 10 to 20 people or so, that have come in with, these are bigger operations, a lot of different moving parts, multiple millions in revenue, big balance sheet, that type of stuff. And the problem with this for a lot of people is it allows us to build an ego over time. Now, just like my granddad, that ego was the number one thing that ultimately blinded him from looking at the facts inside of his business. When you have an ego, it gives you the ability just to pretend that reality is not reality. It gives you the ability to live in fantasy land and not face the facts or the numbers or anything inside of your business. And that ego, specifically for my granddad, was the one thing that actually destroyed our family farm operation, because all the problems that he was dealing with, he tried to kick the can down the road as far as he could until one day that road ended. But the reality is he could see what was going to happen. He could have made changes 6 months or a year prior, but he just chose not to do that. And he chose to try to stay prideful. He chose to live in his ego and just try to figure things out, right? And if there's one thing that the older generation lives by, and a lot of us honestly live by if you grew up on a small farm operation, it's that we solve problems, right? It doesn't matter what problem there is, we are going to figure out a way to solve it. That is what we do. But the reality is that a majority of that thinking is ego driven. And if you're not willing or able to have the awareness to understand when you're making decisions based on your ego versus based on what the facts are of the situation, it's going to destroy the family operation. And so this is the number one thing that honestly destroyed our operation and kept my granddad blinded. But I've seen it time and time again with these other families coming into legacy farmers specifically. And the ones that have the ego, it's a process for them to really accept the facts that we show them in the numbers on our first meeting, right? Because the whole process that we take people through is getting them that structure and organization that they need so they finally have financial clarity for the first time in their life inside their operation. But one thing that does, though, is it exposes all the mistakes. It exposes all the decisions that have been made the past decade that ultimately got us to this place that we're at right now. And the number one thing that hurts in people is their ego, right? And so a lot of the people that come into Legacy Farmer, they're coming in because they're ready to drop the walls, aka their ego, around them and finally learn, right? Finally look at the mistakes they've made, try to get better, try to improve, try to master their finances, try to transform how they've operated as a business owner so they can ultimately build a different future for their operation and for their family. But at the end of the day, if you are not willing to kill your ego and get rid of it when you step through these doors, specifically into Legacy Farmer, that ego could be the one thing that destroys your family farm operation, just like it did for mine. All right, guys, killer number two is going to be your emotions. So number one was your ego. Now that leads us into our emotions. Now, most people that really run a farm operation and things like that, we're so attached to legacy, right? We want to build something, we want to be able to pass on these assets and everything to the next generation. The downside of this is it causes a lot of us to be emotionally attached to things, right? So for example, new piece of ground pops up, it's way out of your budget, you know it's really expensive or things like that, but ultimately you are going to play this story in your mind that the ground's never going to come up for sale again. It's perfect inside of our operation. It's right next to some other ground. It'll just be perfect. We got to figure out a way to get this done. Those emotional decisions there, I have seen them sink countless family farm operations. And going into 2025, I feel we're going to see a lot more of that because so many people made emotional decisions in 21 and 22 when we had cheaper interest rates, we had higher grain prices, banks were lending out money, and we had borrowers that were willing to borrow against it, not truly knowing how their operation was going to pay for it when grain prices were cut in half, right? And I've talked about this a lot in other videos, but those are the emotions and the decisions that people made in prior years that are ultimately going to sink a lot of operations going into 2025. And again, like with our family farm operation, ego and emotions really go hand in hand here as well, because people that have high egos, they're definitely emotion driven, right? Their ego is so big on how they're going to be perceived and what type of legacy they leave and stuff like that. They're going to let their emotions drive these massive financial decisions that we have today inside the ag industry, ultimately not knowing whether or not they can pay for those things long term, right? And this is the type of stuff that we're trying to stop inside a Legacy Farmer. I don't want any of our customers making any financial decision based on emotions. I want them to go back to the numbers and make this critical decision based on facts, right? And the whole job for Legacy Farmer is getting structure and organization, but I want to be able to bring in all these numbers that play into that decision and get it into one single number that simplifies the overall big financial decision you're making there so that our customers for the first time have have that financial clarity and confidence and certainty in that decision. But in it, we're not just making a decision based on what grain prices are this year. We're projecting out and really game planning out, okay, if I can buy the ground at today's prices, what's it going to look like if prices go down further? What's it going to look like at higher prices? You know, that type of stuff. We got to plan out these scenarios here. And people that are leading these massive financial decisions with their emotions, I've never seen it work out well, guys. And honestly, if you come into Legacy Farmer and you have a very high debt to asset ratio on your balance sheet, and we see that right off the bat, most of the time, it's going to be emotional decisions that got you there. When you combine a person that's emotional with a yes banker, and by yes banker, I mean basically a banker that's emotional and is going to make you loans based on the equity that you have on your balance sheet, not considering all the other variables or your cash flow or anything like that. When you combine those two people, man, we have a deadly combination there that is going to force a lot of people into really tight financial positions like we're going to see in 2025. And the reality is their emotions led them there, right? And so this is why when it comes to running the family farm operation, yeah, you need to be on top of your game when it comes to acting as a business owner, but there's also got to be this personal development side as well that we've focused heavily on inside of Legacy Farmer, because you have to raise the awareness of you, and so that you can see how you're making decisions, how you've made decisions in the past and stuff like that. If you don't have any awareness or any type of mental awareness there, you're going to continue to live your life based on your emotions, and it's ultimately going to end up in a place that you don't want to be, right? Just being straight up honest with you. And for a lot of people, that's going to be Chapter 7 bankruptcy. You're having to sell part of the operation to clean up some debt and things like that. Ultimately, we don't want either one of those scenarios to happen, which is why in Legacy Farmer, that's why we're so focused on knowing what the numbers are, gives us the ability to remove all the emotions in that decision and just make a decision out of financial facts, not emotions or feelings. All right, guys, now the third one, or the final piece here to today's discussion, and the third silent killer for family farm operations, is no estate plan in place. Now, we've had countless 20, 30, 40, and 50-year-olds come into Legacy Farmer over the years, and one of the biggest problems they're trying to solve is literally getting their parents to set up some type of estate plan. Now, the reason this is a massive, massive problem is a lot of parents, they want to kick the can down the road on this. And I totally get it, right? If we go back to emotions, right? A majority of parents are going to base this decision on emotions, because if they have several kids, or let's just call it 3, for example, one came back to work on the operation, 2 other ones live in the city or something like that. They want to make sure everybody's around for Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas and stuff like that, right? Their focus is on keeping the family together. But long term, though, that is going to cause massive, massive wars within the family if your parents are not willing to set up the estate plan. Now, the approach that I've taken with a lot of our customers, going through the stages of when people get involved in Legacy Farmer, foundation or phase number 1 is getting your businesses structured, organized, so you can clearly see the financial health, weaknesses, strengths inside of each business, and just know where the heck you're at financially. And then it moves into stage 2, which is tax planning and tax prep and stuff like that, and bookkeeping and things there. But then the final phase is getting your estate plan set up. Now, if you want to get your 70, 80, or 90-year-old parents to start setting up the estate plan, the first thing that you can do is go set up your own. Go set up your own. I don't care if you're 20. I don't care if you're in your 30s. If you have little kids, you definitely need an estate plan. And I will tell you, for me personally, getting mine set up back in 2017, there was a massive weight taken off of my shoulders, knowing that, hey, if something happened to me today, or me and Rachel as we were traveling somewhere or something like that, the kids are taken care of, right? We have everything structured, we have everything organized and things like that. Now, with family farm operations that have millions and millions of dollars in assets and things like that, it's even more important for you to have this structure and organization in place, but also to have the discussions with kids ahead of time so that they know what they're getting. Now, if you're in your 30s and 40s and the kids are young, obviously you're not having those discussions. But in order to get your parents to open up their mind, or open up their mind to the idea or the possibility of setting up an estate plan, the best thing you can do is set up your own. That's literally the best thing you can do, so that when the conversations come up with your parents, you can talk to them strategically about, yeah, we already have our setup. Yeah, this is kind of the process that we went through. This is who we went through and stuff like that. And I'll tell you, there's just a massive weight lifted off my shoulders, knowing that, hey, everything's structured and organized for, if something were to happen to me and my wife, for example, right? You just start to slowly plant those seeds inside of your parents' mind there to get them open to the possibility and get them thinking about it, right? And so the other thing, though, for you too, is you're going to learn a lot about the process. So a lot of people that have come into Legacy Farmer, they're trying to figure out, well, how do I get my parents to move on this? Well, it's better if you go through the process yourself, because now you're speaking from experience not speaking from theory. Because if you're telling your parents, hey, you need to go get this set up, when you haven't walked the walk, done that yourself, it's going to be tough for that, what you're saying, to have any weight with them, right? And I've had this experience myself here, but that's what I'm saying. It's so important for you to go through and get it done yourself, so that when you're talking to them, you're talking from a place of so much conviction, because you've actually went through the entire process yourself and you felt the relief or just the peace of mind knowing that it was all put together. One of the core values that we have here in Legacy Farmer is learn, live, lead, meaning we are going to learn something, we are going to then live it ourselves, and then once we do those two things, now we're qualified to lead somebody else through it as well. So it goes back to setting up your estate plan first, because now you've learned it, you've lived it, now you can lead somebody else through that process as well. But I've found over time, that's the best way to do this. But the risk, though, for a lot of these family operations, especially the 30 and 40-year-olds that are back there with their family, you've made lifelong decisions to come back to the operation, all based on a promise from your parents that one day you'll get assets, or one day you'll be able to take over things, or whatever that may be there. Over my time and over the years, guys, I've just never seen that situation work out well, because it ultimately, over time, it's going to build a level of anger, maybe even hate. It's going to build resentment. It's going to build chaos between, son and parents, but then think about wife and kids, right? And then wife and son. It's going to cause chaos in that marriage as well. And I've seen this time and time again, which is why it's so important for the estate plans to get set up here, so that even if you're in your 40s, shoot, you at least know what the game plan is. You know where you're going. It's signed, it's in writing. You know what you're getting there, so you can start making different decisions. Kicking the can down the road doesn't serve your parents. It doesn't serve you. Does not serve anybody here. And at the end of the day, most parents inside of today's world, they don't have any estate plan set up. And then the problem with this is that they pass away, and now there's a war between their kids, battling over those assets here. And now, ultimately, you think about legacy, their legacy is tainted, because every time you think about your parents now, for most people, you are going to be thinking about, man, really wish they would have had the estate plan set up so I wouldn't be in a lawsuit with my sister or my brother for the past 5 years, and that cost me $500,000. We've had customers come into Legacy Farmer that have spent close to $1 million just in lawyer fees and attorney fees over a 5 to 10 year period, because they were fighting over ground, because their parents did not take the steps there to get their estate plan set up. So hopefully that tells you how important this topic is, and making sure that these things get done so that you can secure your future, and you have a game plan for what you're going to do, but also too, getting it set up for your kids so that you can ensure that your legacy is intact as well and things are set up. All right, guys, so I hope you found value inside of today's video. Now, the foundational step here, my friends, that you need to have in place in order to really make sure these silent killers don't take over your operation and ultimately ruin your operation is you got to have your businesses structured and organized financially. To me, finances are always and forever going to be the foundational piece of any business. If you don't know where you're at financially, doesn't matter what you want to build, it's not going to happen. And that's why in Legacy Farmer, that's the first thing that we do with our customers, is get that business structured, get that financial organization in place, because then we can build from there. And we talked about our last point there being setting up the estate plan. In order to set up your estate plan, the attorney is going to have accurate financial information, know how businesses are structured and things like that. That is why that is always going to be the most important or foundational piece to any business. So my friends, if you want help with that, that's obviously exactly what we do inside of Legacy Farmer. There's going to be a link below this video. I invite you to click on that link, schedule a free call with our team. On that call, we're going to learn more about your business, the problems, the challenges, and things like that you are trying to solve. But more importantly, we're going to learn where you want to go, right? And what you want to build, what type of results you want to create in your life for your family, for your business, and for your legacy. You're also going to learn a ton about us on that call and the proven process that we've built over the years working with hundreds of family farm operations. And ultimately, at the end of it, we'll decide whether or not we are a good fit to work together. So my friends, take action now. Click the link below, and we'll talk to you on the call.